yeah, so here, I mean, you can see, and this is why I highlighted count. We use it in every tag, and in the simple type, every method has the same, uses count. It's like we use it all over the place. So we'd have selfs. This thing would be fully 15 characters longer, with or 12 characters longer without that shortcut. But yeah, but just like, I don't think most people would give up the $sign syntax for variables. So that's the, yeah, so anyway, so the creator stores the value that was passed in. Then we have just a function which the user of our type is going to call, called increment, which simply adds 1 to the counter. It's pretty simple. And note it doesn't return a value because it doesn't have a return statement. And then we have an asString function. This is, in Lasso 8.5, this would have been onConvert, but we've made it a little more explicit in Lasso 9. We have asString. You can also make asInteger and asDecimal, a number of asArray. You make as many as functions as the types that you can convert to with some fidelity or usefulness. So here, but Lasso really likes to output strings. Ultimately, we tend to think of everything as going to a web page, and that all comes out as a string. So we asString is essential in most types to return a value. So here we're going to return the member variable count as a string. So when we call it, we do a local myCounter. We set it equal to we call the tag counter, which initializes the type and calls the creator the parameter. We call increment a couple times, the member tag. And then we output, which calls asString automatically, because this is being output to the page. And then we do the answer. Yeah.
If you go back to the former slide,
yeah.
If I wanted it to be output as an integer, which would be more useful in this case, or as a date, or something.
Yeah.
What would I do? Would I change the return string, or would I change the asString stuff, or what would I do?
Well, you'd probably add a public as integer as another option. But
I mean, asString as opposed to something that's that's there as default, like on create is a keyword that I have.
Yeah.
I need to use on create. I can't come up with my own on create stuff and say on the first thingy do
yeah.
And asString is a similar keyword, right?
It's a convention.
Yeah.
I mean,
so is there a convention to say as integer or as date?
Yeah, I think as integer, as decimal, and as array are all pretty well done. But asString though is somewhat more fundamental, because when we output to the page, that's the most common. Everything gets converted to string when we output to the page. So, but for example, if you add as decimal, and then you use the decimal tag to cast your counter to decimal, it'll call your as decimal callback. You know, it's like decimal and integer, they look for that callback. And so if you want to provide some, like if you're converting a date to a decimal, maybe you have some meaning for that. If you provide an as decimal when you do that casting, it'll give you a value that makes sense. As array is used somewhat frequently too.
So they all exist on.
You can use all those. I mean, they're all optional, but it just depends on what you want to accomplish.
On the next slide, if you had got as decimal, you would have to call it myCounter member as decimal. How would it know whether to use as string or as decimal? You'd have to tell it.
Well, Lasso tries to. I'm not sure. Just a little. Need to experiment a little, but when Lasso outputs a type, when it doesn't have an as string, I think it just outputs the type name. So basically, like with this code, if we just had an as decimal, no as string, I think we just get back the type name counter, which we. So I mean, just in general, an as string is like in Lasso 8.5, an on convert was pretty essential for to get the behavior you want. So. Yeah, I think in general you're going to have an as string, but you might also have others, if it makes sense. Anyway, that's all I have. So if there are any other questions, I mean, I only had so much time, so I could. There's a lot more we could talk about.
The ellipsis, is it actually an ellipsis character, or is it just 3 dots?
It's three dots, yeah, 3 periods.
Can we switch to commas if we're French? All right.
We already use commas for purpose. But yeah, we actually have, and like as Kyle indicated, there are an awful lot of examples of defining both tags and types, because we have much of the source of Lasso is available through the SVN repository. A lot of reading, yeah.
Now that Lasso 9 is getting closer to shipping, are the tips of the week going to kind of start coming again?
We kind of stopped because I wanted to do Lasso 9 tips, and then it felt a little weird. But yeah, we should start doing those again. Probably all Lasso 9 material that we're getting more public with. Yeah.
How does one access the SVN repository? I mean, what's available there for us?
I don't have the instructions right here, but just trying to think of what the best way. I mean, probably can email it to you if you just want to give me your email address.
Yeah,
just
have to
after.
see more code examples.
Yeah.